Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Farming Podcast. And today I'm staying in Wales and heading down south to beautiful Monmouthshire to speak to farmer Bryony Gittins. Bryony, how are you?
I am very well, thank you, Will. Thanks for having me on.
That's all right. No doubt enjoying the sunshine down there in
Oh, it's
Monmouthshire.
absolutely beautiful. And I'm refusing to moan about how dry it is because I just love the sunshine. So I'll worry about that, when it gets to it. But it is so nice to have some sun and some
Yeah,
grass.
and as a sheep farmer who's just finished lambing, it's been a great spring for you.
It's been a really great spring. And actually, nonetheless, because there's actually lots of grass in front of the ewes as they've gone out. So it's a big sigh of relief, definitely.
Yeah. Have you had a good lambing? Everything gone okay?
Yes, lambing itself has been lovely actually. We're really lucky. I have a group of friends who enjoy coming and staying, so they come and help. And
Wow.
I know, honestly, incredibly lucky. My mum
You've
cooks
got better
for,
friends than me.
yeah. I mean, I have to buy them a beer or two, but
Yeah.
that's okay. And my mum cooks for us all, which is incredible. And um, my legend of a dad still does the middle of the night shift.
Wow.
So yes, and then we just on the day patrol.
Right. Okay. So tell us about the sheep. How many have you got?
We lambed 600. They're Aberfield crosses now. Dad always had Texel Fleam crosses, and then I persuaded him to get some Aberfields about 2017, 18. So they're mostly that now, which is great. They lamb well. They're good mums, um, and not too much problems really. Can't complain.
Yeah. Okay. Is that have you changed those then from when your dad was
Yes,
farming, or was
I think so. I
that's
think
a
it was,
something that you've done?
yeah, one of the sort of first things I did was start concentrating on the flock itself. And I said, Dad, it was a little bit natural because we keep our own replacement ewes and always buy in rams. So when I joined the partnership with Dad, which was 2017, it just so happened that we were at a point where we needed to buy in some new rams. So I'd been on a few Farming Connect things and had seen various things, different sort of rams that were out there. And then the Aberfields caught my eye. So I decided, right, we're going down that route.
Yeah. And you are as probably I think probably as much as anyone I've ever met. You are a sheep enthusiast, aren't you? You because like non-farmers listeners might think that sheep that's obvious for a sheep farmer, but a lot of sheep farmers have a very love-hate relationship with their sheep. But you love them, don't you?
I totally do. And
Yeah.
actually, I think, was it probably when you and I first met, and I had an elevator pitch, which was, Hi, I'm Bryony, sheep farmer from South Wales, and I truly believe that sheep don't die for no reason at all. Which, of course, is a totally brilliant introduction if I ever meet anyone, because immediately everyone says, Of course, sheep die for no reason. That's what they love to do.
Yeah.
And then we quickly decide whether we're going to be friends or not if we start with that conversation.
Yeah, yeah. As I say, I don't think I've ever met anyone who talks so passionately about sheep as you. Is that something that you've like had since a very young age?
uh, yes, I think so. I mean, when we grew up, we had horses, so horses were very much our lives as well. That was sort of what we did. We'd be out on our ponies on the hills.
Yeah.
Um, but actually, so I'm one of four kids, and I would say out of the four of us, it would always be me. I was always in the lambing shed, absolutely favourite time of year. I
Mm.
don't think I did any exam revision. It was always just after. It was always just after lambing. So yeah, I think I have actually. And my brother's always had a strong interest in horse genetics. So
Okay.
actually, as a family, we'd always sort of talk about breeding lines and things like
Yeah.
that. And although I don't have a pedigree flock, I do quite enjoy. the science of the genetics. So I just get impatient because, of course, it's like 5 or 6 years till you see anything. But it's yeah, I have always enjoyed working with sheep.
Yeah, okay.
Would you believe?
And what about grazing strategies? You live in Monmouthshire, that's probably sheep country. Tell us about your grass down there.
It it is sheep country, but we are uplands, so um we're in a valley that goes from about sort of 200 meters to nearly 500 meters. And actually, I don't graze the hill itself, but it's quite a steep-sided valley in the Brecon Beacon National Park. So we're actually in an LFA, less favoured area,
Okay.
rather than the sort of very lush, beautiful flatlands, I call them, the flatlands down near Monmouth. And but the grass, like the grazing platform here, dad had cows, he had sheep, and then there's always been horses here. So traditionally, pony trekking and horse riding has always happened in the valley.
Okay.
And I said, growing up as kids, we were sort of heavily involved in horses because someone used to run a pony trekking centre from our farm, which actually we then took on in later years. But there have always been horses around. So Dad has always managed the farm to sort of incorporate all those sort of three different grazing animals.
Mm.
And typically in those days, he'd have put a lot of fertilizer down, so you can almost turn the grass on and off as you need it, according
Yeah.
to what livestock you've got here. And of course, things have changed as time goes by, and as uh, Dad, I can't remember what year it was, but the cows, he had a series of inconclusive TB tests. We all know how that goes.
Yeah.
And then to top it all off, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he had an illness within the herd of cows, and he just said, "Actually, I can't. I don't think I can do this anymore.
Okay.
I can't have cows anymore." And he had pedigree Herefords, so he definitely loved those. But
Yeah, yeah.
it just got to a point where it sort of wasn't really viable to keep them. So um, we stopped cows, and of course that changes massively how the grass grows and the weeds and everything in between. So as I joined was as the last of the cows were going, and really Dad just had a very sort of, I think there was almost one time when every gate on the farm was open and there could just be sheep absolutely anywhere.
Mm.
And then a lot through Farming Connect, I sort of started learning things and seeing what other people were doing. I'd go on farm visits and be sort of talking and learning, and I saw precision grazing, whose strategy is very this rotational grazing or mob grazing. I don't. There's called so many different things, but
Yeah.
the idea of lots of animals in a smaller area moving moving on from paddock to paddock slightly quicker. So I started to do that and, got myself some electric fencing. Actually, the first thing I had to do was improve our own fencing because it had lots of holes in from horses' hooves and all sorts of things. But
Yeah.
so I sort of improved all of those, got some electric fences, and then got what I call the rotation. So um, yeah, that it's been a fun journey actually, and it's been nice seeing the difference in the grass, and then seeing the difference in the sheep as they go round. And like a huge, what's the right word? I noticed it. We had that dry summer, and the areas that I'd actually done a little bit of reseeding and I'd put some clover and things like that, and they just stayed really green.
Mm.
And it was partly, I think, because it was sort of lucky that it was in a shaded area, so it hadn't got too sort of burnt by the sun. But I think that saved us that really dry summer. We ended up not being too affected. So it'd be interesting to see where we go with that. Except, of course, we've had wet summers ever since. So now,
Yeah. Did you see? results improve quite quickly when you started rotational grazing?
I would say yes, um, but I haven't really got any data to back that up. So
Hmm.
it's more of a sort of visual eye kind of me deciding, uh, and it's sort of because you can see improvement within like swords or something like that. It then feels like there is a direct improvement in the flock and in the flock's health. Um, although last year I've then come up. There's always something. I feel like you always go around in a circle of you're always trying to improve nutrition, but then when you're improving nutrition, something else creeps up. So I've had a
Yeah.
deficiency in iodine and cobalt, which I knew that we did suffer from, but actually it had sort of come around and crept up again. So this year, my scanning percentage was lower than I think it's ever been. But so I did some blood tests with the vet and worked out that it was from this iodine deficiency. And so hopefully that's good because it means we can address it
Yeah.
and uh, and then see where we go from there. But it's
Okay.
always something. You never sit still.
No. Have you seen I don't know necessarily whether this would be the case or not, but since you started rotational grazing or mob grazing, have you seen more wildlife and insects and on the farm? Have you seen, is that improved with the sort of environment as well? I guess is why I'm asking.
uh, I would say yes, but we've been blessed with quite a naturally
Yeah.
healthy biodiverse area anyway. Again, national park, we've got a sort of a ribbon of ancient woodland that goes almost through the middle of the farm.
Mm,
Actually, that's quite. I think that's beneficial because it provides a sort of bit of a corridor and a sort of haven where things can come out and be around the edge of that. So,
mm.
uh, and we have a lot of hedgerows already, and so I would say yes, but we are already in quite a sort of healthy, diverse area.
Yeah. I ask because people often say that, don't they? They talk about that as being one of the big benefits of rotational grazing. And I know people who've said that's been the case on their farm. But yeah, I would imagine I haven't been to your farm, but I would imagine it's fairly similar to ours, but just a bit higher up. But we've already got. I mean, you can always improve, can't you? But we've got a lot of hedges, and I always think we've got quite a lot of wildlife as it is. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say it's something that I would like. It's hard to measure, isn't it? It's a bit of a sort
Mm,
of question at the moment. How do you measure how much biodiversity there is without sort of counting individual species, although wouldn't be impossible?
yeah,
Because I think that there we are there is a lot of biodiversity here, but it would be interesting to know if it's changing.
yeah.
Are there different species and why? And is it because of a climate change or not? Or is
Mm.
it because of something else? So it's something that I've always been aware that I've never like I like data gathering. I like a bit of kind of being able to write that down, in the diary, write it in the diary, compare it back to dad's diaries. Those are
Yeah.
amazing and it's amazing information to look at that. But unless I write that down in my diary, today I saw XYZ, then actually in a few years you look back, oh actually, 1st of May last year I saw these things. Are you still seeing those things now?
Mm.
Then you know whether it's changing or
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. What kind of wildlife do you see on the farm when you walk around? Is there anything sort of quite specific that you'd notice? I'm very excited here because our curlews are back after for the fourth year in a row. So I saw them the other day and I did a little dance when I saw them
Nice. I
because
like I
because
like
I'm sad.
that. Nothing sad about a nature dance.
Yeah.
uh, Things that I get excited about now are they're a hare, and I started initially only seeing them on my wildlife camera, which I'd leave out sort of little strategic places overnight. but now I see them. So growing up, I would not have seen that here.
Very
I know
interesting.
obviously
All
certain
right.
areas of the country here there'll be
Yeah.
lots of them, there'll be more of a pest, but here not so much. So there's lots of those, and I love them. I think they're
Yeah, I do
brilliant.
too.
So does my dog, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
And the other thing are deer. So again, I would not have seen them before, and now I've seen one or two creeping in.
Mm.
So I mean, I don't know really, is that a good thing or not? To me, I like seeing them,
Yeah.
but whether they have an impact on other things, time will tell. Um, I mean, there's an incredible variety of wildflowers at the moment. So this, genuinely, May and June are my favorite time of year
Yeah,
because
mine too.
it's when all those wildflowers are coming up, all
Mm.
everything's emerging. So, and it makes you realize when there's blossom, when there's different things like that, you can tell that there is a variety of things. It's not just all green leaves. It's
Yeah.
that there's blossom of this or something different of that, and it's nice. I'm forever taking little pictures and showing my social media for my glamping unit, but I hope they care about this because I'm like, look at this flower.
I'm sure they do. You mentioned Farming Connect earlier, and they're for people who don't realise it, it's a farming advisory body in Wales. Um, have you done much sort of benchmarking and peer-to-peer learning?
Yes, um, I've used Farming Connect a lot in the last sort of 5, 6 years. Just whatever's relevant to me, I'll sort of step in, or make the most of. And probably the last 2 or 3 years now, they've run discussion groups.
Hmm.
So obviously, I joined the sheep discussion group. That was when I joined. And then I also
Yeah.
joined I think they called it the red meat benchmarking, but it's basically sheep and beef farmers and will um, bring our financials together. So we have a spreadsheet and we put our end of year financials in sort of specific to our businesses. And again, this is working with Precision Grazing, who are a consultancy who have sort of started in grassland management, but then actually realized it's hugely linked, it's directly linked to your business management. And
Hmm.
that means knowing and understanding your accounts and your finances. And so I've done that now for 2 years, which has been really interesting because you're benchmarking really against yourself because you can never compare. Like my farm is so different to your farm, even if you have sheep.
Hmm.
It's just too difficult to make a direct comparison. So you're inputting your data, and you might look at sort of industry trends, like what that looks like against an industry average, which they work out somehow with some magic math. And but then it helps to sort of see where you are now. You can't really make any goals unless you know where you are now, and then you can make your goals for the future, which might just be surviving or whatever it is. Because, um, but until you actually know that, it's, it's, it's I think we hide a little bit from our finances, or we risk hiding from them. So it's been really good for me. It was quite scary when I joined, and then I realized, we're all there for the same reason. No one's
Yeah.
really directly comparing, like no one's really analyzing mine except for me, and then whoever might help me. So it was actually really
Yeah.
good.
I think it's a farming neighbours thing, isn't it? You don't want the neighbours to see you like frightened of what the neighbour's going to say. But you're right. It's yeah, everybody's just trying to get on, aren't they? I don't suppose
Yeah,
anybody, you only really care about your own figures, don't you? But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, interesting. Okay. Um, you've talked, very sort of listeners might think, because the way you've talked for the last sort of 10 minutes about sheep and the business that you've kind of done the sort of classic farmer route and gone to school and then gone straight to the farm. But that's not the case. When you were growing up, what did you want to do? Did you want to be a farmer or did you decide you were going to go away for a bit?
I So the farm is when Dad first started farming here, it was 270 acres, and it was mum and dad, and I'm one of four, so four kids. We call ourselves the four kids. So that was Dad quickly realized that he had to add diversification businesses here to sort of manage as a farm, as a family. And I think he would always have been very aware. So my dad is from a farming family and will have gone through a sort of process of his own farm succession.
Hmm.
And whereas my mum isn't. But he always encouraged it. I think he would have always been very aware that with four of us, this farm is not going to allow all four of us to stay here farming.
Hmm.
So he has always encouraged us to, and plus, this is the type of person he is. He'll say, go and do other things. So we knew, even from when we were small, go and do other things. Plus, I think it was one of the rules. If we ever wanted to work with him, we had to go and do something else first. So if you go, you get experience somewhere else, then you come back, bring that back, and then take it from there.
It's very forward
So
thinking, isn't it, really? It's not always the
he
case, is it, in farming?
no, I know, and he's always been like that. We're
Yeah.
really fortunate, and I think as well that probably is helped by my mum not being so much from a farming
Mm.
background, because she would have sort of not. She would have been thinking of, I don't know, different career paths for us, not necessarily farming, or however much you think of that as a parent.
Mm.
And but we also, so my dad is originally from Sussex. That's where his home farm is.
Okay.
So we moved to Wales when I was 5. So it's pretty much all I can remember. And so I count myself as being Welsh, even though we're right on the border. And I know this is how I decide I know I'm Welsh, because if this is the ultimate question, right? If England are playing rugby against Wales, who do you support? Then, because I support Wales, that therefore means I'm going to be Welsh.
Do do
um,
do your mum and dad support Wales or do they support England?
I I don't think they actually watch rugby
Oh,
very
okay.
much, to be
Okay.
honest.
I thought maybe they qualified by residency rule by now. Maybe they'd be Wales
No,
fans.
well, maybe, but it meant that we sort of because we also had family ties in Sussex, we spent quite a lot of time there.
Hmm.
And when I left school, Dad had encouraged us to go to university. In those days, it wasn't so ridiculously expensive to do so. And I
Yeah.
decided I didn't really know what I was going to do, and I agriculture wasn't really something that was on the cards of me doing for
Hmm.
whatever reason. So I studied zoology, mainly because I've always liked science. Science has always been my thing, and I didn't want to do biology because for some reason I decided that the zoology is essentially just the animal side of biology. And I went to Newcastle to do that, so 5.5 hours away. I think we were quite independent, so it was go and do that, go and do other things. So I studied zoology in Newcastle for 3 years, moved back home and thought, oh, what do I do with this? Because I didn't want to go into teaching. I didn't want to go into a lot of my friends who did the course of me would have gone into further education. They were doing PhDs. I mean, it was quite cool. Some of them did
Mm.
PhDs on coral reefs and all kinds
Yeah,
of
but
things like that. But I didn't want to stay in education, so I didn't really know what to do. So I came back home and I signed myself up to a computer course at the local college because I just thought, well, at least I'm doing something that will be a skill that I'll use. And a friend of mine at the time lived in London and had a room become available in her flat, and she was looking for a roommate. I thought, oh, I'll just go and work in London for a while. So I moved to London. I honestly, I had enough rent for 1 month. That was it. So I was like, okay, I need to make this work. So I just went to London, signed up to loads of temping agencies. So they just phone you and say, yeah, this company just needs someone. It started off, you just sit behind a desk answering a phone, but then
yeah.
you sort of start doing more and more. And it was really interesting. Worked for loads of really interesting companies. And then once you've worked there for like a week, because you're filling in for someone, they say, oh, actually, another job needs
Yeah.
filling for a while. Or and then as I did that, I ended up staying working for a bank. So they were a sort of a permanent position then.
Okay. Wow.
I was the PA to the head of the CEO's office, whatever that means. I know. So but it was good fun. we lived in, we worked in the city of London, and I knew that I didn't want to stay in London forever, so I just said, well, I'll make the most of it when I'm here.
Yeah, a brilliant experience though. You must have met loads of
Yeah,
cool people and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. I guess I learned a lot about people as well, people skills and people
yeah,
management.
yeah. I think so, and I definitely met. I've definitely met some key people in my life. One was when I was traveling on my gap year, and another would have been when I worked for this bank. And she just had this absolute. She never let you look at anything with a grumbling or a moaning kind of. She just like, no, come on, you just get on with it. And
Mm.
but having someone like that work when you're working with them or if they're in your life, it just you can't dwell and stew on misery. You just get on with it. And she was a really inspiring person to work with. So
Yeah.
I think that kind of definitely shaped what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be because you live in a more positive mindset basically.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose we all need a few people like that in our lives, don't we? Yeah. So, you said you knew you didn't want to stay in London. So did you have a fixed time period in your mind for when you wanted to get out, or was it just
Not
sort of
really.
see how it
I
goes?
Funnily enough, I met my now husband Steve when I was still living in London, and he's
Okay.
from Hay on Wye, so that's half an hour from here.
Yeah.
And he he him and my brother-in-law and neighbouring farmer and another couple of friends had got into 4x4ing. So they used to get these Land Rovers, put super wheels on them, and go to these events where they drive their 4x4s anywhere they can drive them, and punch a little punch and win the challenge or whatever they wanted to do. So anyway, I lived in London at the time, happened to come back to Wales for a friend's birthday, um, which I hadn't even planned on doing because when I lived in London, I thought I don't really need to be going back to Wales all the time. I'm in London, and came back for this friend's birthday, and then that's when I met him. Um, and then basically, when we started going out, it was like, oh, but actually, I live in London. I don't really need to be starting a long distance relationship with someone in Wales. But it meant that actually, as that progressed, it kind of was that that was then a natural time for me to come back here.
Okay.
But then again, I moved back and I didn't really know what I was going to do because my skills of that I learned working in this head office in a bank, and it was an
Mm.
international bank, so we used to work a lot in Hong Kong time hours and American time hours and all sorts of different things. It didn't really translate to anything that I would do moving back to a rural area.
Yeah.
So I trained and became an outdoor activity instructor, basically. I
Okay.
thought, what could I do next? And but this you mentioned like the people, and at the time, companies like corporate team bonding, team building,
Yeah.
that was what everyone was doing.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought actually it makes sense because I have experience with the outdoors. We were forever running up mountains and falling in caves and climbing up rocks and whatever. So I thought I could get qualified in that, and then I know how to talk to those people from companies,
Mm.
inner cities or whatever. And so that was it was kind of my thoughts of why I'd start doing that. And I enjoy it. I enjoy working with groups of people. I'm outside all the time, pretty much, if I'm in a cave. But it's
What was your favorite thing you did? Favorite activity?
oh my gosh, so many things. We went to the Ardèche, um, which is basically like South France area, and we went climbing. And I'd climbed, but I hadn't really climbed up, you know, real
Mm.
rock faces and where you're climbing, and then one of you climbs, and the next one climbs, and then you kind of keep climbing like that. We did that, which was a pretty amazing adventure,
Yeah.
and canoed on the river and did things like that. And it's something. It's a bit of a shame that more young people don't do that as much as they used to now. I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah. I guess, yeah, there's Duke of Edinburgh award, isn't there? But even that, it's not as open to as many kids as it used to be. So all the sort of
No,
funding
no,
cuts in state schools and things, as I'm finding now with my children.
yeah.
Um, yeah, trying to my one of my girls climbs anyway. She climbs it every week. I have to take her
Oh,
to an
nice.
indoor climbing centre. But I had to go on the tall walls in there, and it's much harder than it looks, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really technical and yeah, it looks so easy, but yeah. Do you still
No,
do any of that? Yeah,
not a
doing
huge amount. But my kids are now 10 and 12, so they're getting to the age where they they we can do more with them again. And
yeah.
although they love their mountain bikes and they've got little motorbikes as well, so that's more their thing. But I we don't really like as farmers. I don't since coming back to the farm. I don't know whether it's because I'm I feel like I'm busier on the farm, or we don't tend to go out and do as much. I'll take
Mm,
them. We go to local clubs and we still do quite a lot, but we wouldn't go. You know, Steve and I used to go up to Scotland and just go mountain walking or winter walking in Scotland, things like that. Whereas I don't tend to do that now, and I don't know if it's is that a farmer thing or is that just because we're at that stage in our lives where the kids have been quite little, so you don't tend to do it with little kids. Some people do, which I always am totally enviable of. I
mm.
think it's amazing, but
Hard to find a balance, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. So
I guess it's all about.
how did you get from being very contented as an outdoor pursuit instructor? How did you get from there to coming back to the farm?
I think I think we, as a family of, as us four kids, had never really thought much about it. Dad was still here. Mum had the diversifications on the farm, which, were going well, still going well. And Dad had been slightly reducing his sheep numbers, and but he was sort of relying on other people to come and help, which is fine. I mean, it's nice to have help, and there's always someone around. Um, but then he got quite ill, um, which was, well, I mean, it was an out of the blue illness, but it shocked us all into suddenly thinking, oh, actually,
Mm,
he's not going to be here forever
yeah.
doing this. And if he is ill and in hospital, so he was in hospital for a period of time, suddenly, who's looking after the animals? Who's looking after the farm? Who's got an eye on things? So it was a wake up call, really, into us thinking, right, we need to at least start talking about this. And then again, for me, naturally, so my kids had been born and were quite little, and so it wasn't that easy running up mountains and being in caves all the time when they were small. So I kind of was thinking I was at a stage where I needed a bit of a shift anyway, which in some ways maybe that it was perfect timing because I think again out of the four of us, I was only ever really the one that would have come back to farm.
Mhm.
My my older sister, is a teacher. She teaches and now works in education across the whole of Powys. My brother, he actually initially trained in accounting, but then he sort of since changed and he's now a teacher. My younger sister has was living in Dubai, so her travels took her there with my brother-in-law, and actually I thought, well, not it wasn't a case of who, who of us was going to farm because we did discuss other options of do we let does the mum and dad keep the farm, we let it out, or do we? So we did talk about various options of what dad would do if he started doing less or didn't run the actual farming business, but they obviously still wanted to be here. And then actually I said, well, I would really like to do this. I'd love the opportunity to do this. And we started discussions. That would have been in 2016. And but Steve, I remember my parents came over to where Steve and I were living at the time, and they said, right, if you're going to do this, what does that look like? What does this mean? What are you going to do with your house in Hay? You're going to be driving over, it's half an hour drive. And then I said, well, really, if we're going to farm, then I am going to farm.
Mm.
That so I asked then, I said, if we're going to farm, like I would like to farm at the end of this farming, or because I don't want to farm a farm that's a quarter mine and a quarter my brother and sisters in the future. So basically, we had that discussion from the very beginning.
Mm.
It This is what it needs to look like in the future, and Dad agreed because he's from a farm that I said he's from a farming background, and I think he understood that again this farm was not going to be split up into four and be a profitable farm. The only that would look different to
Yeah.
what it is now. Um, so that was agreed, but that and then one thing and another, we moved over here, and time goes by. Of course, as time goes by, this is where it
Yeah.
just gets difficult. So, and not because I farmed the business, like Dad and I were partners in the business. We're farming, so that is fine. That's a day to day really.
Mm.
But the overall assets, if you like, and what happens in the long run was either being ignored and not really talked about, or was changing. And it was when Steve and I realized that there was changing discussions within our family of what would happen here in the future, that I thought we need to actually have something written down. We
Yeah.
need to actually have something in place, because I'm here not drawing a salary from the farm, because we're just making ends meet, and we're doing all the things that we probably shouldn't do. But especially if I talk to the sheep consultancy group, they say, you've got to pay yourself. I know, but in reality, does
Yeah.
that always happen? But then if I'm not doing that, then and then there's all this discussion about what might happen or what might not happen. So it pushed us to sort of say, okay, well, it pushed me. I said, right, we have to sort this out.
Mm.
But actually, that's difficult because, well, the whole thing is difficult. But to them, because I'm then the one pushing for this to happen, then that looks a certain way. And
Yeah.
so it
It's
got extremely difficult. And we had a facilitator come in to help us. And I mean, I'll let you know, I've sort of written down a couple of notes that I just want to say specifically on succession, sort of things that I've learned, because um, I don't know, we could have done things differently, but we needed to go through the process. It has to happen somehow,
mm.
at some point. Um, so we entered this sort of quite difficult time, which is strange because we've always got on as a family and we weren't not getting on, but this underlying the underlying sort of outcome just changes dynamics, it changes everything, and that's hard to deal with really. And it got to a point where sort of I realized that my dad was really struggling,
Mm.
um, and mentally, for want of a better word, and various things. And then I realized that I had got to a stage where I just, like, I wasn't so excited about the sheep. I wasn't making decisions. I didn't want to invest anything because I didn't know what the future actually was. So it just seemed pointless. And then you get to the stage where you don't really want to get out of bed in the morning because you're thinking, well, what's the point? I
What's
don't
the
know what
point?
I'm
Yeah.
doing this for. I'm
Yeah.
not even getting, a pay check in my bank at the end of the month, really, not in the same way.
Mm.
So I kind of, that that sort of feeling you don't realize because it's often such a gradual process. And then you get there and think, well, you at some point you sort of have a bit of a revelation where you think, no, I can't keep doing this. And Steve and I, he sort of it's in some ways even harder for him because the partners of the
Yeah,
immediate family are also hugely affected,
of
and they're
course. Yeah.
not the immediate family. So we just said, right, we need to have like write down the 1st of September 2024, whatever it was. If it is not sorted out by this point, then we just have to walk away because we can't just carry on. Um, but it wasn't until we sort of had that within the family and the succession. It wasn't until we had that physical point in time that we said absolutely we have to have decided something by this point,
Yeah.
or but it was quite hard. I remember Steve and I, we went away, we went totally away for the day. And I said, what is our option B? If option A is stay and farm the farm, what is our option B? Like, what am I going to do? What job
Mm.
am I going to do? What job are you going to do? Is he going to stay in? So he's a mechanic. He runs a garage in Hay still. So he works off the farm 4 days a week. And I said, are we going to stay in the area? And then we actually, like, I actually booked to go and see some houses. They weren't houses that I wanted to live in, but I had to make myself go through the process of what does my life look like if I'm not doing this? I'm going to go and look at this house here. Could we afford this? Where
Mm.
would the kids go to school? What would I do as a job? And we kind of went through that process, and it I think it helped me become a little bit more level in what I was asking within our family. And I think they knew as well that something had to happen. And I think really for us, it was kind of this new budget. There were murmurings about this new budget and the change of inheritance tax, and so it was a perfect time again for us to push ourselves into
Yeah.
saying, right, and for dad, and I think he then improved, like visibly improved, um, when he knew that there was a target. And I think he struggled the most with the fact that he felt like he's trying to keep all of us happy. And they are like, my parents are wonderful people in that they've always been
Yeah.
so aware that they want to be fair, and they they've always been as fair as they possibly can be, even though the saying was always like, well, life's not fair. No, it's not. But they would always try to be as much as they could
Hmm.
in whatever way that looked like. And so what so it was hard for him because there is no equal outcome.
There's no perfect
Or
solution, is there?
no.
You just can't.
And
Yeah.
it's not it's how do you measure it, because
Mm.
it's not like dividing something physical into an exact quarter or
Hmm.
whatever. It's subjective and everything else. So
Mm.
there was no, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, and that
Yeah, because I actually do know some farms that have tried to do that, divide everything equally, and that's caused more problems, arguably, than anything else. Because as you say, it doesn't work like that, does it? It's just not. It
it's
doesn't
not. And
doesn't
and
doesn't
we
leave anyone happy, does it? Then.
no, exactly, which is why we were always clear from the start.
Yeah.
We either farm the farm or I'll do something else, because I
Yeah.
can do something else, and I will do something else if I need to.
Yeah.
I would just like to farm because I enjoy farming. So yeah, that was that was uh, that was definitely a tough time for all of us. Um,
Yeah. It feels like I guess it's a time of life thing, and you and I are similar age. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but we're similar. So I'll claim we're similar. But I feel like everyone I know is going through succession issues at the moment, to varying degrees, and some are navigating it quite easily and successfully, and others are just at their wits' end. And I know several people who are either in the process of walking away from their family farm or very nearly at that stage. And it's incredibly sad for everyone involved, isn't it? As you know, parents, siblings themselves. That there's no winners when it all breaks down, is there? It's just a really, really sad situation. And I suppose the only thing I would say, looking at those situations from the outside, is the only thing they've got in common is the communication is really poor, and maybe we're not very good at that in farming families generally. I don't like to sort of generalize, but maybe we're not the best at communicating with each other and talking to each other about what we really want.
I don't think we are, but then I'm not too sure what families, if that many families are,
Yeah, maybe.
like anywhere. I think that in
Yeah.
farming it's just more critical and perhaps more pronounced because
Mm.
we have to have this discussion. And there will be obviously in other businesses. So Steve, my husband, went through a succession within his because his dad ran the garage before him,
Mm.
but there was a slightly clearer path for them because of the family situation and various other things. So, but yeah, I don't think I think as farmers we're very quick to sort of brush our emotion under the table or brush our feeling under the table and not really want to look at it. We don't. We just, no, you carry on. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. I had to take one of the kids to the doctor the other day. Shock horror. What farmer goes to the doctor? No one. And then she found out we were farmers. She said, "Oh right, your farmers come straight in." And I just thought, wow. I don't know if that's good or not. That farmers have a reputation that everyone else, they're like, no, just wait
Yep.
your time. Whereas farmers, if you've gone to the doctor, that means you're in the door straight away because you're unlikely to be putting anything on. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that myself lately as well. Yeah, yeah. Um, I guess you've obviously you've got through all this now, but and I guess mentally you're feeling back to normal now, but it must have been a very difficult thing to go through mentally.
Yes, definitely. And like I said, you don't realize the impact on yourself.
Uh-huh.
It's not so physical. So like our physical health, if if you are becoming less physically well, then maybe you're putting on weight, or maybe you're less mobile, or maybe there are physical signs. So
Hmm.
it's a little bit more obvious. Whereas I think mentally, you there aren't quite such the same tells, or if there are, it's easier not to look at them,
Yeah.
not to know what they are until it gets to a point where, you know, well, I, until it gets to what point, I don't know. I just remember, so I just remember feeling like genuinely did not want to get out of bed. I did not want to work because working just meant that I had to then be in this situation which was unknown and difficult and worrying and all of that.
Mm.
And and then I didn't really know what to do with myself. And then a friend, actually it's a mutual friend of ours, he said, you need to go. He said, right, go somewhere that you love going and sit there and make a list of all the things that you are grateful for. And it was like this tiny little exercise. I thought, okay, yeah, whatever, fine. So then I took myself up to the top of the farm, and I mean, we are in a beautiful area. So I sat, and I loved going around. I call it my grazing management meeting with the dogs, right around the farm. So we're at the top of the farm, and I sat down, and I thought, like, I have got to grow up here in this incredible location. I have got to live a life that's been really interesting, going and doing other things, and yet always knowing that I could come back here to where my family was, and there would always be that place. And I just thought, yeah, I am grateful. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for this. And then whatever happens in the future, we'll deal with that when it comes along. So, and Charles was like, right, take a photo, show me that I think, he was like, just so that I know that you've gone and done that. But it was definitely, it was a turning point that just made me think, okay, it is up to us how we view things
Mm.
and how we deal with them. That is entirely up to us. Other people can affect us, but essentially what we do from one moment to the next is entirely up to us. And I just realized I have to do something here to help myself, because I can't I can't just stay where I am. It's just not, it's not viable for anybody.
Mm.
I could see the effect it was having on my, my Steve and my boys. It was just, and my family. No, so, but what I thought, well, what do I do? I have no idea what to do. It was a brilliant start. But I remember, I think I just started looking. I started looking for things. I started listening to podcasts about just, I don't know, not necessarily self-help, but I just started trying to find things that gave me a bit of a direction or something like that. And it just meant that I think doing that kind of leads you from one thing to the other, because you've started doing something, you started actively taking control
Yeah.
of not just sitting there feeling it in an utterly black hole.
Yeah, I'm sort of nodding and smiling throughout because I've had similar, well, maybe not similar because every mental health issue is different, but I've had mental health stuff before, and I've done similar things, written things down. It's been a big help for me. One of the things actually that helped me, and shout out to fellow podcaster Michael Blanche, the Pasture Pod, a couple of years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago now, I did a series called, I think he called it It's About Time, did 5 podcast series, and it was about time management within farming. And it was basically about creating good habits. And it had such a big effect on me, that series. And I've seen Michael since and gave him a massive hug because it yeah, some of the things he talked about, I don't know, it was like a click in my mind, and I really tried to do it. And I have, for someone who often goes into things very enthusiastically, and then because I've got a tiny attention span, it fades away. I have actually kept up most of those habits, and that kind of writing things down and having a gratitude list has been quite a big thing for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can certainly empathise with that.
Well, I listened to, so I like reading, but really I don't have that much time to. So I started listening to podcasts, but also listening to audio.
Yeah.
And I listened to the 5 a.m. club.
Oh
I think
yeah.
it's Robin Sharma. So
Yeah.
it's not, it's, well, take it or leave it, right? It's a book. You don't have to sort of agree passionately with
Mm,
everything he says, but it was just interesting. It takes you along a story where you suddenly have little light bulb moments.
mm,
And one of those was, you get up early and have that time for yourself at the start of the day. So I struggle a little bit, like as a mum, as a business owner, you get mum guilt for not spending loads of time
yeah,
with your kids, that you've got
of
stuff
course.
to do in the business. And so the sort of overwhelm, lots of things happening, lots of people clamoring for my attention. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
And so so I now get up, my alarm goes off 5:45. I don't really have to get the kids out of bed till 6:45, 7 o'clock. But it just means I don't, I'll make a cup of tea, I can just sit down. Um, and th- if I don't have that at the start of my day, sometimes I won't do much and hang the washing up, something like that. But actually other times I'll listen to, there's an app called Headspace,
Yeah.
and it's just, I I don't know if I discovered it myself or someone recommended it, but it just gives me that 10 minutes of just sit down. And you can listen to music on it, little radio bits, little podcast, whatever you want to do. There's lots of different things within the app, but it
Mm,
just, again, like you say, introducing a little habit that then just helps you, just meant clear my mind, feel calm, then you start your day, made every bit of difference.
yeah.
And then, suddenly you're like, put your shoes on, get your school bag, all of that. It's less, it just seems less, you know, like
Yeah.
the rising panic. I call it the rising panic of life. Like when things are getting too much, you're worried about something, and then someone's asking something of you, and then the sheep doing,
Yeah.
escaping probably, or whatever. And it's like this rising panic where you just feel, I mean, you'll have noticed if you're ever around someone else who's in the rising panic, you, you'll get that sort of, you end up it's a bit transferable. You're sort of not quite sure. You're feeling a little bit,
That's
what,
right.
what's going on? But it's
Yeah.
just like, right, we'll just take the moment,
Yeah.
feel a bit calmer. Okay, this is fine. We
Yeah.
can find the kids' shoes, get the sheep back in there and say this goat. But it's game changing. It really, it is, for me, it's been game changing how I then, you know, get through day to day, look at, feel positive about the future.
Amazing. And speaking of calm spaces, tell us about your this. This is a smooth segue, isn't it? This is
Oh, that
why
is a smooth segue. I like it.
this is why no one pays me the big bucks. Um, tell me about your diversifications, farm stays.
So when I moved back to the farm, um, we moved into a part of the farmhouse that Mum had let out as a self catering, and therefore we'd taken away a business stream income, and I therefore wanted to do something else that could
Hmm.
then sort of replace the income. And I looked at renovating, well, we renovated one of the railway carriages that were already on the farm. It was a sort of a shell that I thought, oh, I'd seen these glamping type things, and we just thought, yeah, we can do that. So um, we did that. Opened it coming out of lockdown actually, so it was really popular because that sort of time everywhere was a staying in the UK and looking for somewhere to just get totally away.
Hmm.
And then I've since, so I've got an exemption license, which means I can have so many pods within an area. It's totally, the exemption license basically allows you not to have planning permission because you're showing that you can take away everything with no trace within a certain time frame.
Oh, cool.
So there's
Okay.
no concrete. You still have to meet criteria like access has to be good and you're
Yeah.
taking things into consideration, especially environmentally. But that was
Mm.
good because I wanted to do that anyway.
Mm.
Um, so you just have a sustainable space that if you needed to take it away would just be left with a bare patch of earth.
Hmm.
And so that became Lantoni Castaway. Um, and it's just it's an I'm utterly biased, obviously, but it is a totally peaceful place to be because this is, like I said, it's national park. It's a beautiful area. There's no, it's a small valley road, so there's no sounds of traffic. It's a dark skies reserve, so assuming it's not raining, you can see the stars,
Yeah.
and it's just lovely. And I set it up kind of in this sort of need to have another business, but actually I've really enjoyed having them because
Mm.
they're just so nice, and it's lovely to market them and to promote them because I'm essentially giving guests something that they love. It's a really nice experience to have. So I'm working a little bit on the moment about changing that sort of narrative just from come to stay somewhere to that well-being in the middle of nature because I think people are becoming more aware of
Yeah.
mindful moments and things like that. So they've yeah, I
I've
might and it
noticed that with your social media posts. I think they've really made me smile. You're doing that really well. I think from what I know, but to me, when I see those social media posts, yeah, it appeals. Even well, obviously we have four noisy children and busy lives, and it makes me want to come and stay.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, maybe we'll get around to it one day.
Well, you're very welcome.
Yeah. No, you're doing a great job and yeah, they do they look great.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Dave.
Okay. What are your future plans? Is that something you want to do more of the sort of farm stays or you want to focus more on the sheep or now you've got all the sort of succession issues sorted, what's the sort of next phase?
Um, truthfully, we all of our succession was settled in October, so I
Hmm.
feel like I've been sort of rolling out of this. Right, okay, what do we do next? And I haven't allowed myself to look hugely to the future previously. So we're actually it's quite an exciting place to be because we kind of
Yeah.
now can. We do have I need to apply for planning permission for us to build a farmhouse for us to live in because it's not sustainable for us to stay in the little sort of wing that we've been living in now. So a little bit of our future plans will depend on how this planning permission process goes. So watch that space.
That's
But we,
exciting. That's
yeah,
exciting, though.
well, it is actually, and I
Yeah.
feel like although it's the national park, which is notoriously,
Mm.
has stringent sort of regulations, but we are we tick the boxes for a farming and agricultural need to be here. So it's just a case of getting the application sorted and pushing to see if we can make that happen. Um, Business wise, I would like to. It's a balance really with the glamping units because what I have never wanted is to have lots all on top of each other because
Mm.
that's not really what they are. I think if people are coming here to, to
Yeah.
not be in the middle of nowhere, but to have that peace and quiet, then I don't want lots of them really close together. So I would like to add another one, but so we've got a railway carriage and we've just put in a geodesic dome, which is pretty cool. So there is room for another structure there. So I would like to expand that. And I think with the sheep, I'd like to reach a balance. And actually, this is pushed by this group that I'm part of, which I quite like. But I would like to reach a point where the sheep can live, be as healthy and happy as they can be, whilst being profitable, would you believe, whilst basically being profitable enough to sort of cover what they need to cover.
Mm.
So, so if I can get to a point where they, I can run the sheep enterprise without, well, I still would like my subsidies, but without relying on those.
No, I
Watch the
think,
space. That's a whole nother conversation. But
yeah,
basically, I need to. That's based from need, right? I need to. That business needs to show that it can work
yeah,
without being subsidized, because otherwise it's not a business. So I would like. That's my sort of target. Can I make them do that? What does that look like? You know. So there are things in place that sort of that I'm going down that route might just it'll depend on a few systems changing
hmm,
and but we'll see. It's quite fun.
yeah, and still going to be doing some wider industry roles. I know that's how we met, isn't it? And I guess we've both done bits of different things, and um, we're passionate about the industry in Wales, and you're still planning on doing more of that stuff.
Yes, I hope so. Yeah, I run the risk of doing an awful lot of not very much of one thing sometimes. I
Are
think
you
we can
are
all
you like me, just really bad at saying no to things? I feel.
no, actually, do you know, I'm not. I don't mind saying no to things.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
there's
I'm
lots of
terrible at it.
things. There's just lots of things I like doing, and I
Mm,
think is a brilliant idea at the time. So then I sort of take lots of things on, and then think, oh my gosh, I've taken all this stuff on,
that's what I do.
and and then I'm cross if I can't deliver what I
Yeah,
need to deliver. But I hope I will because
yeah.
it's it's well I like to stay relevant in the industry, really.
Mhm.
Plus, I love to meet people, so that kind of keeps you doing things like that.
Yeah, cool. Glad to hear it. Okay, let's finish it with the five traditional hard-hitting questions.
Here we
What's the
go.
best gig you've ever been to? Music, comedy?
What's the best gig? So I'm a theatre girl, and
Didn't know
therefore,
that. Yeah, okay.
well, so theatre. Well, maybe that's what drew me to London.
Mm.
Any musical theatre I love, but anything like Royal Opera House, we used to get tickets, complimentary tickets as part of when I worked in London.
Oh,
So
cool.
I used to have the opportunity to go a lot, which I love.
Yeah, okay. I like musicals as well, but yeah, that's really cool. Okay, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice is definitely do not compare yourself to anybody else.
Yes. Yeah, 100%
That,
agree with
I
that.
mean, that's all you need to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my wife would very much agree. Okay. What's the best book you've ever read?
Recently, my favorite books are by Brené Brown.
Yeah,
So
okay.
she is just powerful.
Inspiration.
She
Yeah.
talks about shame, vulnerability,
Hmm.
leadership, relevant to leadership. I just think it's so relevant. All those things, especially as Brits, like, oh my gosh, it's really hard to hear, and exactly why we should hear it. So I listen to them on audibles quite a lot if I'm not reading it. But
Yeah.
if I have
Okay.
to read a book, then it would be like a fantasy fiction, like any Tolkien or any of those. But
Did you ever read any Terry Pratchett?
yeah,
I love
yeah,
the much missed Terry Pratchett. Yeah.
yeah.
I love the Discworld books. Okay. If you could meet any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Well, I feel like this is a fairly obvious choice, but it would have to be Nelson Mandela because I hate, he is inspirational in many ways, but having gone through everything that he went through and came out of it, number one, not not bitter or anything towards anyone else. I just think he's the kind of person that we could, sit in a pub with and have a good chat with.
Feel like the world needs some of that kind of leadership now.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that book, Long Walk to Freedom, is on the shelf behind me, so that's not
Wow.
a setup, I promise. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Okay, lastly, all-time favorite song.
All-time favorite song. So you have to bear in mind that I grew up in the 90s, therefore it was the boy band era. And therefore my favorite is a never forget, take that belter.
Really good. That's been one of my favorite boy band songs as well. My kids have got into randomly, my girls have got into the Backstreet Boys lately. So,
Yeah,
Backstreet Boys, I Want It That Way has
love it.
been like, that is a banger as well. It's
Tell me you
awesome.
sing to it as well, or they're
I
going,
can Oh yeah,
Dad, oh my God, Dad.
with my youngest, I'll video us singing it and I'll send it to you. I'm not making it
Yeah.
public, but I'll send it to you. But yeah, we sing it in the car. It's a banger. So yeah,
Love
yeah.
it.
10 out of 10 approval for 90s boy band artists. Okay. Um, Brian, it's been brilliant to speak to you,
Well, thank
and
you very much for having me.
I'm glad you are back on the straight and level and yeah, charging on again. And
Good.
yeah, hopefully we'll catch up with you
My
soon.
pleasure. Yes, thanks,
Cool.
Will.
And to everyone at home, thanks for listening and hope to see you next time. I've been Will Evans. This has been Rock and Roll Farming. Thank you and good night.